Good afternoon. It's Jim Armstrong, and I want to introduce my spouse Anita Lee, who's one of the people who helped develop the program I'm going to talk about, and Deborah Coleman, sitting next to her, is a facilitator who works with us on the workshops that we run. So in 2014, a number of us gathered to try and process the murders of people of color, particularly young black men, that was becoming so public. I don't know that it was particularly new, but it was becoming much more public. And as a result, we thought about what we could do within our congregation to help move us along. And that was aware of something called the Birmingham Pledge. An attorney named Jim Roch in 1987 felt that racial issues in Birmingham were dismal and felt he needed to do something about it. And so he went home and wrote something that he called the Birmingham Pledge to End Racism, and started recruiting people through his connections and contacts to sign it. And he's been doing that ever since. There's now a Birmingham Pledge Foundation working on this work. As of now, 150,000 people have signed the Birmingham Pledge, both in Birmingham and worldwide through his website. And that modified the Birmingham Pledge and tailored it to Richmond. And in the fall of 2014, we conducted a worship service during which members of color in our community talked to our congregation about their experiences surrounding the way racism operates in our culture. And at the end of that service, we held an altar call, and we asked members who were willing to come forward and sign the Richmond Pledge to End Racism, which we had printed on a large banner. And I believe at that service, several hundred of our members signed that pledge to end racism, and we started putting banners up in the building indicating people who have signed the pledge. We've also had an interracial choir in Richmond called One Voice use the Richmond Pledge to End Racism, and they asked their audiences to sign the pledge to end racism, and the entire choir has also signed. So the movement has been growing in Richmond. One of the questions we had is, now that we've gotten people to sign this pledge, what do they do? And a major concern is in trainings, in our efforts along these lines, what are we supposed to do? And so Annette and Anita got together and developed a 12-hour curriculum that unpacks a number of issues surrounding the operation of racism, individual bigotry, as well as structural and institutional elements, talks about the implicit attitudes test and the work that Harvard has done in connection with our implicit biases, talks about, within our Unitarian Universalist congregations, talks about Black Lives Matters and Black Lives of Unitarian Universalism, and talks about the eighth principle. And at the end of that workshop, what we ask people to do, and a lot of the work in the workshop is done in small groups that are facilitated. A pair of facilitators will work with a group of about 6 or 7 people. At the end of that workshop, we have a card that we ask everybody to fill out. And the card indicates, first of all, that they are signing the pledge. Second of all, we ask them to tell us what they're going to do to fulfill their pledge to end racism in Richmond in the next week, in the next month, and in the more general future. We collect the cards and we send those cards by mail back to the folks after a few weeks to remind them of their pledges, and we ask people in small groups to hold one another accountable about what they've agreed to do, because in the small groups we all share the commitments that we make. So there's a group of people who are aware of what I have done to end racism, what I have done and have committed to do to end racism. And so what we're hoping is that this becomes a part of people's lives. Now, I want to read you the Richmond Pledge to End Racism so you hear what it is that folks are signing on to in our training sessions. I believe that every person has worth as an individual. I believe that every person is entitled to dignity and respect regardless of race or color. I believe that every thought and every act of racial prejudice is harmful. If it is my thought or act, then it's harmful to me as well as to others. Therefore, from this day forward, I will strive daily to eliminate racial prejudice from my thoughts and actions. I will discourage racial prejudice by others at every opportunity. I will treat all people with dignity and respect. I will commit to working with others to transform the greater Richmond region into a place that treats people of all races, ethnicities, and cultures with justice, equity, and compassion. And I will strive daily to honor this pledge, knowing that the world will be a better place because of my effort. So that's what people end up signing for us. And so far, over the past 4 years, we have gotten about 1,000 people to sign our pledge. We've developed this 12-hour training program. Approximately 250 people have completed that. We've held 10 training programs at my congregation. There's another Unitarian Universalist congregation in Richmond, the Unitarian Universalist Community Church. They've held 3 training sessions. We've had people from most of the attendees have been Unitarian Universalists, but we've also had Episcopalians and Catholics and Jews and Baptists come. We've even, surprisingly enough, in Richmond, Virginia, there is a Sikh Gurdwara. So we've had a couple of participants from the Sikh tradition come and join us. And so we're hoping to build this into an interdenominational, non-denominational effort in Richmond by reaching out to different churches and reaching out to different organizations and seeing if they're interested in using this tool to help end racism in greater metropolitan Richmond. In addition, thanks to a Chalice Lighters grant from the Southern region a couple of years ago, Annette Marquis and Anita Lee have been able to travel around a number of communities in the country, mostly in the East and the Southeast, but it also includes San Diego. And they've taken the facilitators training and orientation to those churches and given those folks an opportunity to start pledges of their own. We'll be heading to Clemson, South Carolina next weekend so that we can begin work on helping them create a Clemson pledge. And they've already partnered with 10 religious communities in the Clemson area, so it's not just the Unitarians that are getting involved down there. It's exciting work. We have a table and a slideshow if you want to get more information, and there's contact information on that table. Please feel free to make a picture. Anita's card is out there if you want to pick up a card and reach out to either her or Annette about if you have any interest in learning more about our program. Thank you very much.